On today's edition of the show, the Florida Panthers defeat the Vegas Golden Knights by a final score of 2-1 and had full control in this one. On today's show, where we are going to discuss the win, we're going to discuss how the Florida Panthers have performed in the last 4 games, the wild card picture, and looking ahead to the weekend for the Florida Panthers. All on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, March 8th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and send in your 5-star rating to whichever podcast app you listen to Locked On Panthers for your chance to win 2 free tickets to a future Florida Panthers game. Best of luck, everybody. So the Cats, after a big win on Saturday, a few days off once again. It's great with the schedule with having days off, and it's even better when you do come out with wins. And a lot of positive momentum going for the Panthers as of late. I know they had a few duds here and there, but for the Panthers against the Western Conference leading Vegas Golden Knights, one of the best road teams in all the NHL, and this game for the Panthers, despite it being a 2-1 final score, this had the feeling that I felt personally that the Panthers were just in full control really of this game, and never felt that the Panthers were really going to let it up, especially with the amount of shot attempts they had early on in the game. But it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, which means that Jacob Winans is back for another edition of the show. And we are recording this a little bit later than we usually do, a few hours after the game, because Jacob was actually in attendance at FLA Live Arena for this 2-1 win for the Florida Panthers over the Vegas Golden Knights. First of all, Jacob, welcome back to the show. Second of all, I hope you're enjoying your spring break. And third, what a win for the Cats.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me as usual. And yeah, I got to, like you said, I was at the game. Living in Orlando, going to school there. I like to take what mini breaks I'm able to and get down here and see the Panthers live. So I made the trip on 95 last night, got in today, spent some time with family, and went to the game today. It was awesome. You could tell from just entering the building. Everyone knew the stakes going into this game. It was a lot of nervous energy in there. Fans, everyone's on their phones throughout the game. Intermission, everyone's on their phones. Scoreboard watching. Everyone was celebrating on the escalator on the way out until everyone kind of checked their scores and realized the Penguins won in overtime, and it was kind of a collective groan of, oh man, that's a tough break. But at the end of the day, it is a huge win. And like you said, it really, being there live, you really never felt at any point during this game that the Panthers were the inferior team. They really dominated every aspect of that game. Got some tough breaks from the officiating, got some really tough breaks on a couple of shots off the post, no puck luck. It easily could have been a 5-1, 6-1 even final score, but it was a really big win. Defense was solid, and even down to the very end, you really never felt like the Panthers were going to give this one up. It was an impressive win.
No doubt about it. And second straight game where the Florida Panthers never trailed at all in a game as well. And you think about how that first period went for the Panthers. The shot on goal advantage was set 11-9, but that didn't tell the whole story of the game, where the Florida Panthers, as far as shot attempts, like, it was more than double of the Vegas Golden Knights. And credit to Vegas, they were getting bodies in front. At one point, it was 15-0 as far as block shots for the Vegas Golden Knights, but that was more of a testament of what the Florida Panthers were doing. And Jovo and Randy Moeller were talking about more of, you want to move a little bit more laterally to get a little bit of a cleaner shot on goal, like do more of east-west for the Panthers as far as that. But I mean, even then, 4:25 into the game, the Vegas Golden Knights are breaking. Look to have broken up a pass, and then Mahura, right before it's about to exit the zone, gets it to Ryan Lomberg and nails a wicked wrister past Adin Hill on that one. And then the Panthers just continuing to possess the puck. Jack Eichel was only held to one shot on goal in the game, and that didn't come until the third period. When the Panthers were in their zone, they were quick on getting the puck out. They were tough on their board battles, especially that top line where I spoke about it on yesterday's show of Barkov and Luostarinen together, those defensive forwards, the guys who get to work on the board battles, and then you bring in the speed of Duclair. That line was so dominant tonight, Jacob. My goodness.
Yeah, they jumped off the ice to me. Being there, watching them play, it felt like every time they were on the ice, something was happening. That line easily could have combined for 4 or 5 points. No doubt about it. Anthony Duclair got stopped on a couple of really just incredible saves by Adin Hill, who had a fantastic game, by the way. Adin Hill was spectacular. But Anthony Duclair got robbed at least twice, missed the net on a 2-on-1. Luostarinen had at least 2 good chances in front of the net, and then Barkov himself, while he did score a goal, could have had a hat trick with the chances he had. That line was fantastic. Etu does not look out of place on the top line at all. He looks like he's thriving in the role. Defensively, they were great. They really neutralized the Jack Eichel line. I thought Barkov got the better of Eichel from the very beginning of the game, really held him in check. And then Sam Bennett and his line defensively, while they didn't provide a whole lot offensively, defensively, they did a great job supplementing the Barkov line defensively. And you had your top 2 lines were essentially canceling out the top 2 lines for Vegas, really from the jump. It was not in question whose top 6 was more in control of the game tonight. The Panthers' top 6 really had control of the game. And I like that you brought up the Mahura play to keep that puck in the zone and get Lomberg his goal, because that goal, while it didn't come on the same shift, that goal was very, very, very hard earned after the Panthers had zone time for probably 2 minutes consecutively without the puck exiting the Vegas zone and then forcing the icing. It all kind of built on that, and it was stacking good shift after good shift, and the Lomberg goal kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's a classic testament of making your own breaks. And both of the Panthers goals came off of excellent effort at the last minute to keep a puck in the zone and making that extra effort to keep possession and create a chance. I thought the Panthers really earned both of their goals, and in turn it earned them the win.
Yeah, and with the extended zone time for the Panthers right before that, the crowd let them hear it in a good way, that they're like, man, they're getting their chances. So you just see it building from the jump for the Panthers. And then you mentioned Sam Bennett, second on the team in hits on the game, and then he was creating some puck separating hits that would create rushes. Him and of course Radko Gudas get it leading the way. There was a play where Matthew Tkachuk got stung by a puck, went down the tunnel, but before that he made a diving stop to get the puck out of the zone too as well. So that line, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, and Carter Verhaeghe just continued to work well together. Not them, Paul Maurice not doing anything to split those guys. And of course Lundell going back to the third line with Sam Reinhart, a place that they're very comfortable in with. I know Sam Reinhart he's been snake bitten and he's missed the net quite a few times, but you know, that line together, there's familiarity there. And then Eric Stahl in the few minutes that he's played tonight, only 12:35 of total ice time. He's tied with the most shots on goal in the game in 12 minutes of ice time too. So even the bottom guys were getting in on the action tonight, on Tuesday night for the Panthers. And just, there's a few mental errors. The too many men on the ice. Part of me is thinking that's a little bit of a mental error by Brandon Montour, but then you think of puck instincts. You're going towards the bench, but then you see a puck right there, and then you're ready to. It's like a split-second decision on that in that instance for Brandon Montour, and of course he gets a tripping call later in the game. I don't understand the Radko Gudas, why he went to the box. His helmet was ripped off by Brett Howden, and though he went after him, there was nothing that said roughing for it, at least in my definition when I saw it. And Vegas is the team that gets the least amount of power plays in the whole league, too. And the Panthers gave them 4, and they were able to stop 3 out of 4 of those. So little bit of luck as far as a little bit unlucky as far as going to the box on the night, but as well as mental errors, especially on that too many men on the ice penalty.
Yeah, definitely. The officiating was not great tonight at all by any stretch. The Panthers were definitely on the receiving end of a few questionable calls and a few questionable no calls. It's hard for me to get on here and completely and just rake the officiating over the coals because for the majority of the game, the crew was short and official. I believe it
They were
was
down a
O'Rourke.
linesman.
Exactly. I believe it was O'Rourke who went down. It may have been O'Rourke or one of the linesmen, but yeah, they were short and official, so it's a crew that was spread thin. You can't catch everything. The Gudis one, it made no sense to me. I did not understand that. He gets his helmet ripped off, and then honestly, just some routine pushing and shoving. If you want to give them both a roughing, give them both a roughing, but it still should have been 4 Vegas, 2 Florida, and a power play. I didn't get that at all. Panthers special teams tonight, the power play didn't connect, but they did look good. It seems since Barkov has been back in the lineup, they've added another element to it, where it seemed like we had been force feeding the Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart play, but now we've also incorporated Aaron Ekblad into a low slot one-timer on the other side, and they tried to connect on it tonight. It worked against Pittsburgh for a goal. They just missed on it at least twice tonight, so now you've got an extra option there. Then Brandon Montour, of course, when those plays are working, he's not at all afraid to get a point shot and look for a Kachuk deflection. So now you're looking at 3 legitimate ways to score goals. So I feel like the power play is getting ready to click. A couple of mental errors, like you said. The Brandon Montour play, watching it live, it looked like Radko Gudas and Brandon Montour, there was just a bad miscommunication. Radko jumped on the ice definitely a second or two way too early. Hopped on the ice too early, but Montour was kind of coming off the ice slowly and had his eye still on the puck. So they clearly there was some miscommunication on the timing there, which it happens. It's unfortunate they scored on it, but that sort of thing happens. It happened at a bad time. But like you said, the penalty kill was good. Goaltending was great. Sergei Bobrovsky was excellent on the penalty kill. And the biggest thing that I noticed as far as the mental errors, when you make those kind of mental errors, you have to make up for it in effort. And the Panthers definitely brought their lunch pail mentality today with extra effort, getting pucks out of the zone. Matthew Tkachuk did almost resembled a soccer slide tackle to make that to block that shot. Takes it right off the part of the leg that has no padding, crawls around and clears a puck. That's the kind of stuff that you need this time of year. That fires up a team, and I thought the effort was off the charts tonight, which more than made up for the few mental mistakes we saw.
Yeah, the good outweighed the bad. We haven't said much of that this season, but tonight was definitely the case, and lately for the Panthers, it definitely has been as well. But in segment number 2, we're going to discuss more of how the Panthers have a little bit of perspective on how the Panthers have looked in the last 4 games, and a little bit of a scoreboard watch, and a little bit of a question to ask about how you handle the next two games as well. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel Sportsbook. And we're at the midway point of the NBA season. It's here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and easy to use. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine bets for your chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Segment number 2 here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers defeat the Vegas Golden Knights by final score of 2-1 in a game which they had the control the whole time. And Jacob, so you spoke a little bit about the scoreboard watch for Panther fans, seeing how Pittsburgh scored five unanswered goals after the Columbus Blue Jackets went up 4-0. I believe their 4 goals were on their first 7 shots, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that stat, but they don't get the help. But here's the bright side of that. It's an overtime win, and Pittsburgh has 24 regulation wins. The Panthers have 28. That helps so much in tie-breaking scenarios for this Panthers team. One note there. It would have benefited the Panthers more had the Buffalo Sabres won over the New York Islanders. Why? The Panthers play the Sabres one more time, and the strength of schedule the rest of the way, it's harder for Buffalo. They didn't get that, but you know what? It's a win either way. As far as the scoreboard watch, you're 2,000th of a points percentage behind the Sabres now and the Ottawa Senators. So it's getting closer. The days off, along with getting some wins, are helping the Panthers get some rest and be a little more comfortable in scoreboard watching when they do get these wins. There'll be 2 days off in between now and Friday. But also with the Panthers and the last 4 games, Sergei Bobrovsky, .957 save percentage, 1.26 GAA, 5 goals allowed in the last 4. None of them have been in the third period. None. 10 million reasons to be happy, my friend.
I agree. Goaltending has been a shaky subject for most of this season. Bob certainly did not get off to the start this year that he wanted to, but since the new year, he has turned the page and he has looked dominant a lot of nights. Today he made some incredible saves. But it wasn't so much the spectacular stuff. It was just being rock solid. Doesn't give up a bad one. And that's really been our issue with Bob at times. Is it's not that he's consistently bad. It's not that he can't get in and win you a game. It's that so many times he has given up just one that you're like, did that just go in? Like, how do you give that one up? It makes no sense sometimes. Yeah, exactly. A guy as good as Bob, sometimes you see one sneak in that you're like, that had no business getting past our star goalie, but he really hasn't allowed any of those lately. And I think tonight was another example of that. He was just rock solid. You didn't have to worry about him. It was really steady. He looked comfortable. He was moving well, seeing the puck well, wasn't flopping around or diving or swimming in his crease. I think you need more of that. I think getting a couple days off does him good. It's going to be interesting. This is an interesting coaching decision coming up where you have a back-to-back, Chicago, then Winnipeg. Do you risk playing Bob both games, or do you try to sneak out a win against Chicago, which is on paper a really, really bad team? Do you try to give that game to Alex Lyon and come away with 2 points, or do you go with Bob, ride the hot hand and hope he doesn't burn out? It's a tough situation to be in. It's a big question. I feel like obviously we feel more comfortable going into the back-to-back if Spencer Knight is on the team.
Yes, I agree.
It's very, very unfortunate what's happening with him, but it's way bigger than hockey. We hope always hope for the best for Spencer. And you have to go with the guys that you have right now. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. I think Alex Lyon can win you a game. I really do. I think he can win you a game against Chicago. But I also don't know if you get Bob out of his rhythm. So it's a tough question that we're faced with. But like you said, scoreboard watching, yes. I know we've been saying all season, just win games, don't scoreboard watch. We're now in that time where scoreboard watching is in full effect. We are going to scoreboard watch. Every point matters. I would say for Panthers fans who are scoreboard watching and keeping a close eye on the standings, don't only focus in on tonight's results, because while it wasn't completely favorable for the Panthers also did not play last night, and last night was incredibly favorable for the Panthers. So it kind of evens out. We're still in this race, and again, with all your scoreboard watching, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the Panthers still control their own fate. Just win games.
Yeah, and mentioned how yesterday how the Ottawa Senators lose to the Chicago Blackhawks 5-0, and Brady Tkachuk going after Alex Stalock towards the end as well in that one. And I put up a poll, Jacob, and I asked the question: do you consider letting Bobrovsky rest one of these back-to-back games this Friday and Saturday? And this was posted 30 minutes ago. It's going to be out for a full day, so anyone listening, you can go to the Locked On Florida Panthers Twitter page and vote yourself, and put the just two answers: heck yes or heck no. I say heck no, Jacob. You're at that point in the season where you're desperate. The Panthers were always in question even before the trade deadline of, will they be buyers? Will they be sellers? The only team to not do anything because they believed. We're seeing now a fully healthy roster. Of course, man, and I can't praise enough of Anthony Duclair. I know his only goal is an empty net goal from last week against Tampa. But man, what an element he's bringing to that line, and how it changes the other lines on this team as well. Eric Stahl said that he didn't want to be traded from the Panthers because he believes in this group too. And you got to I think it's all gas, no brakes for this Panthers team. It truly is it truly is at this point of the season. And look at the two teams that they're facing in this back-to-back. Chicago, you got embarrassed by them last go around. Winnipeg was one where it was it's funny. It was a Winans Wednesday when we did that episode. The Panthers were injury riddled going into that one. All the injuries were mounting up in the last game of that Western Canadian trip, with points needing to be made up. Thursday's a big night. Dallas versus Buffalo, Pittsburgh versus New York, which if you're a Panthers fan, you should be cheering for Pittsburgh in that scenario, because Panthers have a game in hand. If they lose if New York loses regulation, the games in hand would equal New York's points. But I still think you ride Bobrovsky in both games.
I actually agree with you. I think starting Alex Lyon, I think it sends a message. I think it sends a dangerous message across the rink to the Chicago Blackhawks that you're telling the Blackhawks, we're not taking you seriously. I don't think at this stage of the season you can give any trap game opponent any extra motivation. And right. They beat us already once when we weren't starting Alex Lyon. We had a roster that we expected to win that game with, and I feel like you have to ride the hot hand. I don't think sitting Bob is going to do him any favors. I think you want to keep him in his rhythm. It also helps that there's an extra day off in between. So while he may be playing 2 days in a row, he does have an extra day of rest. It of course is going to come down to how Bob is feeling, how his body's feeling. But I think you got to give him both games. I don't necessarily think The second night of a back-to-back against Winnipeg is a sure thing if Bob is in goal and Alex Lyon started the day before. Because at the end of the day, you're either playing Chicago with a rested team, but Alex Lyon in net, and then you're playing Winnipeg with a tired team, but Bob in net. I don't think that's really that big of an advantage for you. I think you have to do everything. You have to throw everything at Chicago to guarantee you 2 points, and then you turn around and give Winnipeg your best shot. I think the first game against Winnipeg, we went into that one. We called it a scheduled loss. This one, it doesn't feel like that. This feels like the Panthers have a shot to win both of those games. And Chicago, I think if you start Bob, the message has to be with the team, let's give Bob an easy night. You go in, jump on Chicago early, put the game out of reach as early as you can, give Bob an easy night. Protect your goalie, keep him as rested as you can for the next day. And I think the Panthers are in good position right now to snag 2 or 3 points out of the 4 possible there. I of course would not be at all shocked if they come away with 2 wins in that back-to-back. I think this is a team that looks very different from what we've seen. Defensively, they've really tightened up, which that's a good sign this time of year. And like you said, Anthony Duclair has been an absolute shot in the arm with the top 6. He's brought an element to that top 6 that we haven't seen all year. His play driving the creation out of nothing and allowing Carter Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk to stick with Sam Bennett, not having to have a revolving door through that top 6 with your wingers, trying to find someone to put with Barkov. You can really stick with what you have right now. You can let Verhaeghe, Bennett, and Tkachuk continue to play well together, and with Duclair moving up to the top line, he's been fantastic. And I think there's a lot of credit that needs to go to number 27, Eetu Luostarinen, as well. He's taken on much bigger responsibility, and he's flourished with it. So I think the Panthers have just now, as they're getting healthy, have really, really found something that works, and I think they need to keep riding it. So I personally, as long as everyone's healthy and as long as everyone's available, you roll with the same group. You send the same team into that game against Chicago.
Yep, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's definitely a good situation for the Panthers to be in at this moment in time. But we're gonna continue the conversation, talk about the trends for the Chicago Blackhawks and the Winnipeg Jets coming up over the weekend. Talk about the previous matchups a little more on this Winans Wednesday edition of the show. But first, we're gonna tell you all about Built Bar. If you're looking for are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. And now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to the Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Third and final segment here on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, Jacob, the Chicago Blackhawks have actually been trending in the right direction in the last 10 games. They're 6-4-0. We spoke about that win against the Ottawa Senators. The Blackhawks they can surprise you from time to time. There's a lot of players on their roster who are just continuing to fight for roster spots, not only on the Blackhawks this year, but in other teams next year. And so we've seen with this Blackhawks team how they can surprise you. They surely did against the Ottawa Senators. That's for sure. They beat the same Vegas Golden Knights just a few weeks ago, beating the Dallas Stars, beating the Maple Leafs as well. So it's not a walk in the park for this Florida Panthers team going up against the Blackhawks. And like we said, it was kind of a performance for the Panthers that was really head scratching and very and I don't remember exactly which date it was, but I believe maybe it was you and I doing a post game show for that one too, and we were
Hmm.
just frustrated as well. Like they get off to a 3-0 lead and they never let up from there, never trailing the whole time for this team. Alex Stalock was incredible and all, but also there's also been turnover for this Blackhawks team as well. They get Nikita Zaitsev as part of their team, who was part of a pretty bad contract with the Ottawa Senators. They, of course, the biggest trade chip of them all. They trade Patrick Kane to the New York Rangers. They trade Max Domi as well, and get a second round pick out of it. And for 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 the Hawks, they have nothing to lose on Friday night, and it's part of only a 2-game Friday night in the NHL. So a lot of people, hockey fans, who are going to be going on ESPN Plus to catch a game. A lot of eyes are surprisingly going to be on this random Panthers Blackhawks matchup. The Winnipeg Jets, not so much. I believe they're 2-6-2 in their last 10, and they were leading the division for a little bit. Rick Bowness looks to be continue to change the culture. Of course, Paul Maurice's old team, but the Winnipeg Jets aren't trending in the right direction. So a team that's rebuilding but can sneak up on you, and then another team in the Winnipeg Jets that have been trending downward. Let me check the record again in their last 10. 2-6-2. I was correct the first time. So big opportunity for 4 points here, Jacob.
I agree. I think I want to start with Winnipeg, which is actually the second game of that back-to-back, and I think it's really important. That's a really good team. That's a team that's always going to be motivated playing against Paul Maurice, and that's a team that also knows his system well. I think that's a really, really important game to kick a team while they're struggling. You got to step on the teams that are struggling. And Winnipeg, while they are a really, really good team, got off to a really hot start and really handed us a beatdown the first time we played them.
5-2.
Yep, I think you really have to punish them while they're struggling and trying to find their footing. They're coming into that game trying to work out some things before the playoffs. The Panthers need to take full advantage of that, and I know it's the second night of a back-to-back. I know you're tired, and it very likely could be Sergei Bobrovsky playing 2 days in a row. That's a game where you have to punish a team that is struggling. And the night before that is actually, oddly enough, is the game I'm more concerned about is Chicago. I know we didn't have Barkov and Bennett in the lineup against Nashville, but the way we came out flat against Nashville in a game that should have been handily won, that's what you're looking to avoid against Chicago. You can't afford to go 0-2 on the season against the Blackhawks. That's unacceptable. And if that happens, it's a team that we can't really expect to make the playoffs with a performance like that. We as Panther fans, we know the Panthers have been that Blackhawks team where you traded some veterans, you're rebuilding, your aspirations are not the playoffs. So like you said, you have absolutely nothing to lose. That's a game that there's gonna be a lot of eyes on it because the rest of the league is pretty inactive, and then also just the region. It's South Florida. Blackhawks fans travel well. Anytime the Blackhawks are in town, that building is absolutely crazy, and it should be a good environment. So I think the Panthers have to capitalize on that. But like you said, it's a team that has nothing to lose, and that's a team full of guys who are playing for their next contract. It's a lot of guys who are playing to stick in the NHL, guys that are trying to open eyes and earn their next contract as free agents or as RFAs. They want that qualifying offer. You're trying to impress somebody to stay in the league or get your next deal. That is all to say that it's a hungry team. They don't have anything to play for in the standings, but each player on that ice has something to play for personally. They're playing for each other, and those are the games you cannot afford to take lightly. So the Chicago game scares me more than the Winnipeg game. Oddly enough, but it's textbook trap game. It is the definition of a trap game, and the Panthers need to come out and not mess around, not play with their food, so to speak, because it's a team the Panthers should be able to crush, and they need to come out and do it.
Yeah, and I was nervous going into the Anaheim game just a few weeks ago on President's Day,
and rightfully so. Look how it turned out.
And look how that turned out. It's like you just can't afford to be down early against this team, a team that you're definitely way more talented than. And I just looked at Winnipeg's schedule. Florida is on the front end of a back-to-back for them. Florida, they'll be in Sunrise on Saturday and then Sunday in Tampa. So, I wonder which one we'll see. Will we see David Rittich or will we see Connor Hellebuck? So that will be a discussion for another day. Based on let's get through the Friday game first before we look at who's starting for Winnipeg against the Florida Panthers, and of course Josh Morrissey having a great season as well for the Jets as well. In Norris conversation, even though it's Erik Karlsson's to lose, but he's still blossoming. Of course, Mark Scheifele is a guy who averages a point per game every season for Winnipeg as well. Blake Wheeler, of course, former captain, even though he's still a big leader on that team, definitely a force for that team as well. But Panthers get a big 2-1 win over the Vegas Golden Knights. They were in full control over this one. The Panthers are feeling good. This is part of the schedule where, they're comfortable at home. They're at the midway point of their homestand. They're facing off against unfamiliar teams in Western Conference teams, a conference that Panthers have played pretty poor against. Their best record on the season has been against actually their own division, which is great for this team. But it's a great opportunity for the Florida Panthers to improve their record against the Western Conference as well. And big points, and a big scoreboard watch Thursday night. So be in front of your TVs, Panther fans, on Thursday night, because it's a big one, and then you'll know how much more clear things will be right before the Florida Panthers take the ice again. But before that, the Panthers will be back at practice tomorrow at FLA Live Arena, and then Thursday at the Panthers Ice Den as well. So 2 straight days of practices, no days of rest, all gas, no breaks for this Florida Panthers team right before they welcome in the Chicago Blackhawks. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Glad that you got to enjoy a dub in person for this Panthers team, and just keep winning, baby. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yes, sir. You can find me on Twitter at JacobWinans8. Leaving town back to Orlando tomorrow morning, so I will not be in attendance for the rest of the homestand. Please continue to pack the arena. The energy was incredible, and we've got a big opportunity. Finally, get another 3-game win streak, hopefully, and enjoy the playoff stretch. So please continue to pack the arena, bring the energy. I loved hearing all the fans tonight, and it's always nice to beat Vegas. So
yeah,
no complaints there.
Yeah, no complaints there. Thank you, Jacob, and I will see you next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NHL with no local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.